Well, I knew I liked him before I met him because he's got the Christmas tree out and it's not even Thanksgiving. And, he's got some LA roots. He's wearing that Dodger hat. It is John Learing, and he is managing director of WTA Media and Partnerships at DAZN. And we're going to talk about his career. He's worked in the sports realm for so many years, PGA Tour, tennis, the list goes on, and we're going to have a lot of fun looking at his career and find out what makes him inspirational. I'm Bryan Fenley, a national anchor at Fox Sports Radio and a broadcaster for the USTA. John, we've been meaning to do this for a while. Somehow you have the time. I know you're about to go overseas here in a little bit, so I'm excited to do this. And I want to start here. Where do you think your career, and looking at what you've done in all the different places that you've been, where would it be without the direction of Barry Sachs and Mara Mand?
I wouldn't be in sports, period. I mean, Bryan, I am convinced the longer I am in this career that all of us who work in sports media, it's a combination of three things, right? It's 1 part talent, it's 2 parts hard work, and it's 8,675,000 parts luck. And I would not be in sports, period, without Mara, God bless her, and Barry. I was working, this is just how stupid lucky I was, working at Dick Clark Productions. And at the time, Dick basically had cornered the entire entertainment market on award shows. And somehow, I still don't know to this day, but somehow he had secured the rights for the World Cup draw ceremony in the mid-90s when the World Cup was coming to the US. And so nobody on Dick's staff had any idea how to even spell sports. Wow. I was really the only one who knew anything about sports. I was young. There was no way that Dick should have entrusted me to do this show, but he did. And so we took the show to Las Vegas, and we decided to bring some celebrities with us. And of course, ESPN was there because they were, Bob has always been such a big supporter of soccer, of the game of soccer. So they had a set there, and they wanted to get Robin Williams on their set. And so I was friendly with Robin, and he had come along with us as part of our show, and got him on the set. It was about an 8-minute hit with Bob. It went really well. And afterwards, Maura came up to me and said, if there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know. And I said, I want to work at ESPN. And she said, okay. And you're in this business. I was sure it was just a blow off, right? Because so many things are just a blow off. Sure. Whatever, never expected anything from it. 3 weeks later, Barry Sachs calls me out of the blue. We have a nice conversation. And I think within 2 weeks, I was on a plane to have an interview with Al Jaffe, who is also an industry legend. He always sort of grills everybody on their sports knowledge. I didn't have to answer one sports question. We talked about my entertainment career. And a month after that, I was in Bristol, and at what I like to consider sort of peak ESPN. It was the big show with Keith and Dan. It was the launch of ESPN2. There were so many things to do in Bristol, and so many areas for everybody to cut their teeth. It was the greatest proving ground of all time. And without Mara and Barry, I'd be homeless in Venice somewhere, trying to figure out an entertainment career.
Well, I saw how much they meant to you. And I do think, though, that on top of the luck and those opportunities, that you do have a lot of talent. And certainly you put yourself in those opportunities. And when you got to ESPN, where did you feel like your ambition showed itself the most, where you were able to really expand your footprint in the business and take off from Bristol?
I'm not honestly, and I'm not trying to deflect. It was right place, right time. My very first week at ESPN, the first 2 days, I was working with a couple of people to make sure that I knew what was going on. So it was really my second week at ESPN was the week that Nicole Simpson got killed, and was the Bronco chase. The very first feature I ever did at ESPN was a 10-minute feature with Jack Edwards for Sunday Morning Sports, sort of encapsulated the week in OJ's life. And it was such a great proving ground. And from there, I got really lucky. And before I knew it, I was on the road Monday, Tuesday, shooting a feature for College Game Day. And then Wednesday, I'd come back and edit it. And Thursday, Friday, I'd be gone again for Sunday Countdown, shooting a feature for them, and coming back on Saturday and editing it. And you'd work 110-hour weeks, and you never even thought twice about it, because that's what you were there for. You were a nerdy 20-something kid who just loved every bit about sports. And it was the perfect training ground, because everybody you were stuck in Bristol with had the same mentality you did. It was perfect. I met my wife there, for God's sakes.
Let's go to that conversation of how did you meet your wife, and how did this all pan out for you?
She was obviously desperate to someone, and she was an editor, and I used to get put in her room all the time, and we just sort of hit it off and started dating, and we dated for a bit while we were there, and then she got tired of Bristol winters. She had enough of the 85 inches of snow, and decided to go to work for the Olympic Committee in Atlanta. And I chased her down there, and left ESPN, got really lucky again with someone who had no business offering me a job, but offered me a job to help them launch CNN Sports Illustrated. And from there, I went to run the CNN Sports Illustrated Bureau in Los Angeles. And Lee, my wife, and I went out to Los Angeles, started working in entertainment. I kept up sports angle. To make a long story short, we got pregnant with our first daughter. She wanted to move back south where her family was. So we moved back. The closest I could get to Atlanta was Jacksonville, Florida. Put my resume in at the PGA Tour. Again, two people who had no business trusting me, named Stu Nickel and Bruce Kaufman, who I had known at ESPN, were running PGA Tour productions. I ended up with a 10-year run there as the creative director at the PGA Tour, and then transitioned over to tennis after that. But just crazy. And again, would not be anywhere without being completely lucky and having people, for some ungodly reason, have faith in me.
Well, your humility is shining through. Not humiliation. No, your humility.
Humiliation, yes, is probably better. No. Yeah, I get you. I got you.
No, not at all.
Let's talk about you for a second. Can I just tell you real quick?
Yeah.
Here's why I like you, and here's why I'm most fascinated by what you're able to do. You, to me, are the Ted Lasso of broadcasting. It doesn't matter what team you're covering. It doesn't matter what conference you're covering. It doesn't matter what sport you're covering. You are going to find the good in what you're talking about. And I'll give you a perfect example. I watched something you did the other night at 3 a.m. after the Bruin-Trojan game. And you're a Bruin, aren't you?
So I work for UCLA. I do their coaches show, and I've done.
So here's the deal. I know that at one point we won, we kicked your ass, but instead you sort of gave an overview of the game. And when you got to sort of, I think you phrased it as, obviously USC didn't do their homework. And that's such a rare way to explain how poor the Trojans actually prepared for that game. I was really blown away. And then last night, I actually even looked at you doing freaking volleyball, dude. And it's like,
Oh, did you watch it? I
volleyball
put,
like you had been doing it for 10 years. It was so great. So the scope of what you're able to do, I'm just so impressed. And in a sport, not sport, in a business that is so often so quickly jaded, guilty as charged, you remain so positive. I'm just so impressed.
I appreciate that, John. And that's one of the nicest things that's ever been said about me. And I hope from a humble perspective that people see that, nothing has ever come easy for me. I've got a crazy story myself. I lost my dad to cancer when I was a teenager, and I was going south. I mean, I was in a bad place, man, because I had a lot of anxiety problems as a kid on top of everything that he went through. And it wasn't that he passed, which is big in itself as a kid, but it's how long it was. It was a 5-year ordeal where we traveled across the country, went to different hospitals. It was a rare cancer, and his body was just slowly but surely, he was losing himself and he was losing his personality. And it was so slow that it was just it never seemingly ended. And we were left in this constant horror every day, and we didn't know how long he was going to be alive. But I'll never forget, John, and some of the things he taught me about persistence. And I look at him and I say, how did he do it? How did he survive 3 or 4 years longer than when the doctors presumed that he would be around? And I say, you know what? Nothing's been easy for me here. I have a long way to go in this business. I kind of look at myself as sort of a late bloomer because I've been dealing with a lot of dad stuff and haven't really been clear-minded. But now, like you saw, with this interview platform, with the volleyball that I'm hoping can take to the next level, want to do, television volleyball into the future. And then I love tennis. So calling some tennis for the ATP and the challenger level, that now I'm starting to hit my stride. And I feel like I've done some healing, and it means the world to me, John, and you seeing that. And it's a constant grind, and I'm learning along the way. I make my mistakes like we all do, but I feel like I'm at a place right now where I'm going in the right direction finally. And I'm excited to see what the future holds. But like you said, yeah, I want to be, I guess, very respectful of, like, again, as somebody who's a UCLA person, and I just know that there's ways in which I love words. I think it's an art form. I love to study the thesaurus and how to use words as a way to paint the picture. And you can do it so eloquently in a way in which you say what you mean, but it doesn't come off in a braggadocious or, way in which you're sticking it to the person, if that makes any sense.
It does. All I ever wanted to be from the time I was a little kid, through college, was I wanted to write political speeches for presidents.
Oh, wow.
And that's really because, like you, I just love the language and love words. And I remember late in my college career, I had a professor who told me, if you really want to learn how to write correctly, go study how to perform the words, so that when you are writing for a candidate, when you're writing for whoever it might be, you understand where that emphasis is, where all of that comes from. And so I went just for 1 year to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts to learn how to speak words. And I was beyond horrible by it, but or at it. But what I did learn while I was there was how much I loved entertainment and being producing or directing or whatever that was. So I think that sort of moved me from just writing into producing and directing. But I'm right there with you. Words are the coolest things of all time. And I would still probably rather write than do anything on the planet.
Well, let's go to that, because when we're looking at how our lives are going to shape up, and we're in college and we have these grand aspirations of where we're going, and we have it all, to take a thing that you said, writing out, maybe it's all scripted out in our heads as to a way in which we think it's going to go. I would guess, John, that things didn't exactly go as you thought. but they actually went really well. And I'm wondering where you were able to realize that, hey, even if it's not going a certain way, like you pointed out with me being able to adapt, where you've had to adapt in your career the most and where you've been able to shine because of it.
Again, I'm not deflecting. Honestly, I think I was so stupid and so immature that I just went along for the ride wherever things took me. And yeah, I did. I didn't, again, I'll just go back to what I said earlier. So much of everything we do is luck. And you know, I think if you want to do something bad enough, right? Someone once said this about another profession, but I think it applies to sports media as well. If you really want to work in sports media, if you really want to work in entertainment, it's like the dandelion that finds its way up through the crack in the cement. You can't stop it. It's going to find it's going to find the crack and get up through that crack somehow. You just can't prevent it. And I think that's the way that I felt about entertainment first. My best friends in the world are all involved, big wigs in entertainment, and I just sort of went along with them for a while until it kicked, like you, it just sort of kicked in for me, and then things just started progressing from there. But I didn't really have a grand plan. I was way too stupid to have a grand plan. Again, just lucky beyond luck.
I hear luck, but I also hear skill, because if you don't have skill, then the luck runs out. So when you think about your talent, and I know you're very, as we've used the word a lot in this conversation, John Learing is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. We've used luck a lot. We've used humble a lot, but what are you best at?
So here I think is the arc of my career, which is really a bizarre arc. I think I've turned into a generalist. I used to be focused down one direction of the business, which was all creative, right? Writing, producing, directing, whether that was $1 million commercials or features at ESPN. That's what I was really good at. And then when I was about 10 years in at the WTA, I'm sorry, excuse me, 10 years in at the PGA Tour, and a friend at the PGA Tour was being courted for this WTA tour, and it didn't really fit his skill set. And he introduced me to a recruiter, and it went very quickly after that I got this WTA job. But I realized right then that I was going to have to transition more from creative directly into business to sort of run that entire business for them. And I learned very quickly that I was much better at envisioning a project than I ever thought I might have been prior to getting the WTA job. So I was in that WTA job for 2 years, and then was given the opportunity to move to Perform/DAZN and create WTA media out of whole cloth. And again, what I discovered there is that the various skill sets that I had grown along the way had, again, offered me this ability to become a generalist and have a lot of experience, or a little experience, excuse me, in a lot of areas of the sports media business, whether that was the commercial area in selling sports rights, or whether that was production, or whether that was sponsorship and marketing, or whether that was just managing people. All of that sort of seemed to come together at the right time to help me create WTA media. And it's weird, because I think in small ways, COVID is starting to move the business in that direction, right? When I started WTA media, when anybody starts anything, I think anybody who's smart wants to surround themselves with experts in certain business areas, right? So you want to surround yourself with specialists. But I think what COVID has made us re-examine is that businesses are starting to be asked to do more with less. And so instead of hiring specificity, I have now started to look for people more like myself who can fill a lot of holes in the business and know a little about a lot. So I think that probably makes no sense, and I just wasted 10 freaking minutes. But I think the business is migrating to people who have abilities in various areas of the business rather than experts in single business units.
No, I totally agree with that.
Right place, right time. I think that's what I've become and what's allowed me to be successful.
Let me ask you this. You explained the roadmap for you and how you've been able to be so successful. If I asked your wife what makes John have the success that he's had, what is she going to tell me?
No. No, I think she'd say, I think the reason that we're so good together is that we were really good together in the edit room. She's really good at seeing how a story needs to be developed. And I think I'm really good at seeing how a story needs to be developed. I've always been a good writer. And I think that's probably what she would always say is my strength. And I think you can echo this as much as anybody. If you're good at the spoken word, even though I'm not really good right now, if you're good at the spoken word or if you're good at the written word, you can do a lot. And I think that's probably what she would say my strength is, that I'm pretty good at getting my point across when I need to.
How have you gotten your point across with the WTA since you've been there?
Look, I think it all, again, comes down to the fact that the WTA's exec team, Steve Simon, their CEO, Mickey Lawler, their president, Matt Senadella, their CFO, all just trust me and give me the autonomy to do what I want. The people at DAZN, Simon Denyer, their initial CEO, their original CEO, James Rushton, the current CEO, they just give me the space to hang myself with. And I think that is all that anybody can ever ask from leadership, is just, they don't micromanage. They trust me to do what I need to do for the business. And in turn, I think that's what I'm good at with our staff, is that I try not to micromanage the 30 X people that make up the WTA media staff out of London. We just go about doing our jobs. There's too much to do for us to get in each other's way anyway. I mean, we're across the world in 35 different countries doing 52 events in 34 weeks. Last year we probably accomplished more than anybody in the sports media did. We were in 25 countries. We spent more than 14,000 nights in hotel rooms. We took more than 4,500 COVID tests. We took enough airline flights to go to the moon and back twice.
Wow.
And through it all, because honestly, because I have such a good team, we only had 7 positive COVID tests that required people to be quarantined at all. And that's traveling 30 and 40 people a week to various areas around the world. To your earlier point today, may not be as sophisticated as the US in their COVID protocols. So it was a Herculean effort by the WTA media team, least of all myself, to accomplish what we were able to accomplish this year. And because of what they do, I just draft off of that. And I think the people who above me at the WTA and DAZN, just let us continue to do what we need to do.
I hear all the success that you guys are having with the WTA and the tireless work, the long hours, the travel, and like you said, maneuvering through the COVID-19 situation as well as your team has done. What are your tactics, John, in getting the best out of those who you work with and those who work for you, and seeing this product continue to thrive?
Uh, oh, what a great question. Look, the very first thing I'll say is if you're the same business coming out of COVID that you were going into COVID, you've lost, period, end of story. COVID has made all of us re-examine what our business strategies are. And so things that may have been 3 or 4 years down the line in your long-term strategy have sort of taken a front seat. And the little things that you wanted to sort of micromanage and refine before COVID happened, you've just sort of thrown away. It has allowed us to focus on the big material things to being successful. Tennis is about as traditional as a game can get. The very first tennis match ever produced was done by NBC Sports in 1939 in Rye, New York. And damned if camera one was not in the exact same position it is today. So tennis remains a very traditional sport for the traditional fan. There's always going to be that fan that wants to sit back and sort of allow that sport to just come to them, and you sort of deliver it in this traditional linear fashion. But what COVID and what all of this is sort of exposed is there's also a fan out there that expects more before she or he is ever even going to engage with your product in the first place. And the way I look at that, the big thing for us in the present and the future is the digitalization of this sport. We need to make sure that we offer our fan the ability to remain with this sport as long as they want. And by that, I mean, if you want to watch a live match, you can watch a live match. If you want to buy a tournament ticket to the circus when it comes to town, you can do that on the same site. If you want to interact with, I don't know, Naomi Osaka, you can sort of do that through social media on while sticking with our products, right? We need, our competition is not just the NFL or the Premier League. Our competition is Netflix, it's Amazon. And those businesses, those media businesses have perfected how to keep people on their sites as long as possible, right? They've created this stickiness. That's what we need to do, right? So that's where our mindset is starting in 2022 through 2026. It is, here's, I think, what a good leader, and I'm not saying I'm a good leader, but this is what I try to practice every day, is what good leaders do, right? Good leaders, they do 3 things every day. First thing they do is they wake up and they point to the horizon and they tell everybody what's important at the end of the horizon. The second thing they do is they sort of aggregate all of their staff and they tell them why going to and arriving on or at that destination is important to everybody in that business. And then the third thing they do is they make sure that they know enough about everybody in their staff to find them the right seat on the bus so that they can be successful in that strategy and in that destination. And so I think that's what I try to do every day. And hopefully it just sort of, it's a domino effect to everybody on the team. And that's why I'm so freaking excited to go to work every day, is because it's a great team that we have, and it's great to think about what those opportunities are, as long as you're able to articulate it properly to the people who are actually going to execute it on your behalf. Good God, I just wasted so much of your time.
No,
Sort of where we're going.
No, I love this. This is actually going to be in the next textbook that is going to be sold at all colleges as to how you make it in this changing landscape of sports media. John Learing is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. So from a daily basis of what you do, just looking at it from your viewpoint, normally on a typical day, I know there's nothing typical about a day, and I know there's probably nothing that is the same for one day to another. But if we're living in your headspace, what does during one of the big, you don't want to, he's like, you don't want to do that. what is the John Learing way when preparing for a huge tournament?
Wow. First and foremost, it's getting everybody there safely, right? Because we are talking about moving 30 to 50 people around the world from week to week. So we've got to get them there in the first place. And we know that once we get them there, that they're going to be working 7 straight days, anywhere between 12 and 16-hour days. So you've got to keep everybody's energy up. You've got to keep everybody's focus up. That's first and foremost. And then it's about storytelling, right? And as we talked about earlier, it's such a, you know it, you live it every day when you do USTA stuff. It's such a traditional sport to tell visually. What we try to do is we try to add as much data into the conversation as possible, because that's how you're really going to advance that storyline for the viewer, right? We're going to give them almost a second screen experience. I don't know if you can hear my dog. I'm sorry.
I love it.
A second screen experience as much as we can to keep them engaged, because that's also the problem about it's the advantage and the challenge in scheduling tennis, right? So let's use here in the States, but let's not use the Tennis Channel, because the Tennis Channel is an anomaly, because it's 24-hour, 365-day-a-year tennis network. But let's take one of our broadcasters elsewhere in the world. When they buy our rights, they're buying basically 6,000 matches a year. What they're buying in that 6,000 matches is they're buying content for each one of those 6,000 matches that might be 45 minutes long or 3 hours and 45 minutes. So what's very difficult if you're a broadcaster is to schedule this sport, because you have no idea how long of a window you need to provide to get that match in. Because for most of our broadcasters, not only have they bought tennis, they've bought basketball, or they've bought the Big Bang Theory, and they're paying really big money to air the Big Bang Theory. Sometimes you want to air it at the end of tennis matches. How in the world are you capable of doing that if you have no idea what that window for a tennis match is going to require, what kind of an investment it's going to require from you, the broadcaster? So what we try to do is we try to help them on a daily basis every way possible. We try to create a world feed for our broadcasters that offers them maybe the 3 most globally attractive matches a day, which usually means we're going to try to get them the highest ranked players in the world so that they can get exposure on those networks. But what we also try to do is we try to give them access to regionally important matches that might be taking place in that particular tournament, right? Like politics, sports are local. So we know that if we can engage that local audience with a regionally important player, someone who speaks like them, looks like them, acts like them, there's a better chance for that audience to be engaged and lift the sport as a result. So it really is sort of every day a Rubik's Cube of trying to create this product for the various needs of our broadcasters, while also putting really pretty pictures and words together to tell that tennis story. So that's really how each day evolves. And it's that's the beauty of live TV, is that at the end of the day, you get to flush it and start anew the next day. You know it better than anybody. There's no room to dwell on what you got wrong the day before, because it all starts again the next day at noon.
Yeah, that's so well said. And that's for an athlete as well. If they have a bad match, a bad game, and you don't want to dote on it too long, sure, you can learn something for it. But the hard thing is, for those who are perfectionists, sometimes that stuff lingers a little bit longer than it should. And you think it's worse than it is as far as how other people perceive it, because we are as you know, John, we are our harshest critics of our work and what we see.
That's why I'm fascinated by athletes, because especially quarterbacks, right? You throw a pick, you got to throw it. You just got to get rid of it immediately, because you're going to be out on the field 10 minutes later having to do it all. And I'm fascinated by that ability, because I certainly don't have it. Never had it.
Stop. I got one more neat question for you here. So John Learing is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley, and taking off to your point of flushing stuff and moving on. We were talking about this just for a moment at the beginning of this conversation with the UCLA USC football game. The Bruin quarterback in that game, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, first 2 throws were picks.
Yeah.
And then the guy goes off for 300 yards passing. He accounts for 6 touchdowns. So if that isn't a sign that, like you said, athletes and their psyche, their mentality, it is fascinating. And they put a lot of work into it. And I don't think the common fan understands, John, like what athletes do to mentally deal with those challenges, because they know if they can handle it the right way, it's a competitive advantage.
And by the way, Brian, that's not Tom Brady at 40. That's a kid who's 19.
Exactly.
Already able to do this. Yeah. And I could barely match socks at 19.
I still can't.
Exactly. To see kids, I've got a 20-year-old. I cannot imagine her being able to just completely disassociate what she just did in order to be able to do it again 10 minutes later. It's one of the things that I never get tired about in terms of watching sports. Those guys, those men and women who do what they do for a living are the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. And I am, as I'm sure you are, I'm just riveted by them. It's amazing. My friends and I, not to digress too much, but we have these conversations all the time. I've had them since we were 16. Could you score on an NBA player? Could you complete a pass? Could you do this? And my answer has always been hell no. If even a good Division I college player wanted to really play against you, you couldn't gain a yard. You couldn't even get the ball inbounds. You couldn't, from your volleyball match the other night, you couldn't answer. You couldn't do any of the things that are required to be 1% of the 1% of the 1%. And it's amazing. And it's why I never get sick of being in this business.
I would think that more than 1% of your ideas come when you're sitting on an airplane. You're traveling a lot, and you have over the course of your career. And a lot of these flights are overseas. A lot of these flights are to other countries. So these are longer flights. I'm wondering what you do as far as how your brain operates and where your mind drifts to when you're thinking about an upcoming tournament, or you're thinking about how you can make the product better by sitting in these airplanes for all these hours.
I think it's a blessing and a curse, right? When I was first asked to start WTA Media, I was the only employee for about a year and a half. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to get really expansive and really drill down. But when you're the only person doing it, you're always having an internal conversation with yourself. And by the end of the day, you've sort of destroyed all of the good 10 ideas that you start the day out sort of suggesting to yourself, like, what if we tried to do this? And by the end of the day, you've completely shot holes in that. And more than anything, I find that's what happens to me on a plane ride is that, you know, hey, I'm on this plane for the next 14 hours to Tokyo. It'll be great. We'll be able to get a lot of thinking done. And what ends up happening is you write about 3 or 4 ideas down, you spend an hour in with each one of them, and then more often than not, you shoot holes. It's, for me, I find it really difficult to get out of my own way. I'm much better when I can talk to a member of my team and sort of, you know, we can volley back and forth. So I try not to do too much damage when I'm by myself, more than anything.
John Learing, like a plane ride, your career has been a fun ride, and you've been able to weather through the turbulence that has been this last year and a half. And
that was deep.
And I think that your career, if I'm still playing off puns, that your career is, I would say it's still starting to take off. You've got so much more in front of you, and everything that you've done has landed very nicely, a smooth landing. John Learing, Bryan Fenley, so fun. Appreciate this conversation so much.
Thanks so much, Brian. I'm a big fan. So keep doing what you're doing, because out here, we really appreciate it.